All right, so we're almost there. It's almost Christmas. Everybody's probably a little bit excited, and the rest of the country is getting a ton of weather. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But what we're going to talk about this week is living in Florida. There's no white Christmas here. We're getting after that next. Hey everybody, my name's Craig Cunha. I'm a real estate agent here in Southwest Florida. If you're looking for a channel to tell you a little bit more about what it's like to live, play, eat, sleep, and buy real estate on the Gulf Coast, this is the channel for you. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the little bell to make sure you're notified every time. And if you'd like to start your search up front, you can go to our nextfloridahome.com and fill out the registration form there, or use our mobile app. Just pick up your cell phone, look up our Next Florida Home, and you'll be able to do the search the same way there. Once again, this is using the MLS just like we use it, so you get live time information. And if you can't get the answers to your questions there, you've got to do what everyone else is doing. You've got to call, text, or email, because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast. All right, so Merry Christmas from Florida. Yes, we are going to have a little bit different experience than you. We do not really have that white stuff on the ground, obviously. Our only white stuff is these flowering weeds that people affectionately call the Florida snow that sit on the grass, and that's about as close as we're getting. Now, the temperatures might make us think that we're going to get some of that white stuff, and I guess if precipitation was in the air, it could possibly happen because it's definitely going to get colder. Our version of Christmas is obviously a little bit different than yours. We will still have lights out. We're still going to have the decor going on. A lot of different places decorate to the hilt, depending on where it is. Fisherman's Village, where this is shot, shows you a little bit about what we do when we're trying to dress things up for the holidays. And there's many yards and properties that people do decorate. So it is a very common thing. We just don't have the white backdrop. That's really the only difference. Now, we're going to experience record cold or near record cold. We're getting the same cold that you're getting in other parts of the country. The wind chill is going to come in. They're talking about somewhere in the 30s with the wind chill. And I know northern Florida is going to be in the 20s and maybe teens. So it's going to get very, very cold. It's canceling a bunch of flights. So I'm sorry for anybody that couldn't be with your family for the holidays because of that. But this is another one of the things you can't predict. This kind of reminds me of a hurricane. You don't know when it's coming. You don't know what's happening. From what I'm hearing, people are losing power. Lots of people are losing power. So it's going to be a tough situation. So we are going to have the freeze warnings here with this cold weather. And one thing that we do differently with salt, no, we do not sprinkle it on our steps or on the roads. It's not necessary. We just put it on the rim of the margarita glass. Yes, that is how we use the salt here. And that's how we're going to be using it over this holiday weekend. All right, so if you haven't heard, buyers are still flocking to Florida. 5 of the top 10 destinations are in Florida. Number 7 is Cape Coral Fort Myers, which is where we're located. What I want to bring this up for is Redfin did a survey on this, and they found out that people are trying to move away from the expensive job centers that you find around bigger cities. And this is around the country. New York, California, all these different states that have huge cities that have very expensive living there. People are trying to break away from that, especially with remote working. If you're still somebody able to remote work, you might be somebody considering Florida, and that's part of the draw. Now, I was able to find this map the other day that kind of showed how populations do spread around the state of Florida. And if you notice, the darker colored areas with more people in it are all around the larger cities. It's around Tampa and Miami and Orlando and Jacksonville. So that's where the larger concentrations of people are going to be. Yes, I know Cape Coral and Fort Myers are definitely getting busier and bigger, but they're not as big as these cities. So there is still a lot of space in the state. You do have to carefully consider the weather. This weekend is a great reminder as to why. If you are trying to get away from the cold, like this cold they're going to experience in North Florida, that's every year. Now, this is going to be pretty extreme for all of us, but they're in the 30s every single year, no questions. If you don't think you want that, you're going to have to go south. It's the only place to get warmer. Now, on the topic of moving away from some of these expensive job centers in those other cities, if you think about this, everybody does comment about how Florida doesn't pay as much as other states. And that very well may be true depending on what position we're talking about. And obviously, if you're not working remote and can't transfer the income that you currently have, it will change. But you have to also take into consideration the area that you're moving to most likely will not be as expensive as where you came from. And this is everything. It's not just the house. It's also the taxes and insurances and everything else. So take the whole situation and weigh it out against one another. I'm going to ask you to also include the premium for the cost of living in paradise because that's still part of it. But if you are getting away from one of those expensive cities, you will find it a lot easier to transition into affordability here, only because the scale of the home pricing is still going to scale with the areas that it's in. So if you're going to be near a city, expect a higher price. If you're going to not be on the coast, expect a higher price. You can always go inland, but you might be getting away from the things that are bringing you here. The top two things that bring people to Florida are weather and beaches. So if you're not going to get the beaches, you'll obviously get the weather, but the beaches are such a big draw. How far away do you really want to be from that? Closer you get to water, more expensive it gets. That's just the way it is. Now there's a new report that came out that said Florida is going to need 570,000 homes by the year 2030. That's the kind of growth that we're expecting, and that's statewide. So once again, we have to take this in scale. It's not going to be one particular area. However, I've already pointed out about these larger cities getting larger amounts of population, so expect those to continue to grow in advance of some of the smaller areas. But there's still a lot of space to fill in, and we could see some of these cities expanding into some of the smaller communities. I know that's not ideal for some people that came here to have some peace in a smaller town. That's going to get tougher and tougher because even though we just went through Hurricane Ian, and even though everybody thought that that was going to be a total crapper on our entire market here, that's not the case. People still want to be here. In fact, we're seeing developers coming down and already gobbling up property down on Fort Myers Beach. There's one piece of property down there. Used to be one of our favorite restaurants. I can tell you what it is now because it's not there anymore. Shuckers is the name of it, and it sat right on the beach. So many of those videos that you might have seen with beachfront activities going on, that was shot there at Shuckers. The land is now available. They're asking $15 million. And again, it's a nice piece of land sitting right on the water. So some developer will be grabbing it. I think you might remember that I pointed out a property just sold a couple weeks ago for $7 million. They're going to redevelop that area into luxury condos. And each one of those condos is going to go for about $3 million. You can see where this is going. Prices are going to escalate quickly, and we're going to be in a little bit different element. So until more of this shakes out, I can't really speak to it. But things are not stopping. Things are only going to speed up. And these investors and developers and people like yourself that just want a piece of the Florida life, they're coming in. They're coming in hot and heavy, and they're coming in with money. Now, to follow that up, I think everybody knows this financial expert that I'm going to name, Dave Ramsey. He is out there telling people, do not put off buying a house. This may be the best time to buy a house. Now, again, this is not Craig Cunha, realtor, telling you this. This is Dave Ramsey, financial whiz. I mean, this is the guy that so many people follow because he knows his stuff. In any case, he's saying right now is going to be the best time that you may see for quite some time because prices are low. He expects the prices to slowly increase but not continue to drop. He's advising people to go ahead and make the purchase of the home because this could be the very best price you're going to see in the next 5 years because he's expecting all these prices to go up. And what's his advice about the rates? Everybody's worried about rates. He says, don't worry about it. You can refinance when they adjust back down, but don't use that as your reason not to buy. All right. So again, Dave Ramsey said this, not me. I'm just passing on the good word. So if you're somebody that's been on the fence wondering what to do, everybody else is hearing the same information as you are. So you're either going to be one of the people that's going to jump in and get it done when the prices are still relatively reasonable as compared to where they could go, or you're going to be somebody that's going to smack themselves saying, man, I wish I would have. And I think I've mentioned to you before that there's been many, many people I've spoken to that said, I wish I would have. And you know what? I think we've all been there before, but let's not be that one moving forward. Now, Fort Myers Beach is starting to see a number of things reopen. We've already mentioned some of the restaurants and things, and even having to use almost a food shack or food truck kind of a situation to make it work while the buildings are being redone. Well, the Pink Shell Resort did open up part of it. Also, the Lighthouse Resort right there on the corner as you come into Fort Myers Beach it also opened. However, these are only open for first responders, contractors, people displaced from the storm. You're going to have to show credentials in order to have a spot to stay there. So this is not open season on being able to get a rental for season. This is literally just for the folks that are kind of in dire need and need to be in that area to be helping out. Now here's another interesting thing to point out what we're trying to do about solving this housing issue. There was a shopping center that is going to be converted into 320 units. Yes, creativity at its best. We're now taking commercial buildings that aren't being used at this time and converting them into living spaces. Hey, whatever it takes right now, we're literally taking every step we can. I mentioned all the apartment buildings going up. We know that new construction is constant, and now we're starting to convert buildings that aren't being used into living spaces. So we're trying to solve this problem. We're trying to give everyone a space to be. This growth is not going to stop, so we're just going to see it modified over time. Another new thing that's going on here in Cape Coral is they're trying to find another way to give more boat storage options. So there's a proposal on the desk right now that's going to possibly allow for boats to be stored on the side of the property instead of just in the back. They're still going to be asking for a privacy fence to give some kind of a obscured view, but there's also discussion of allowing it in driveways. This is where it's going to get kind of touchy because depending on what the boat is, how well it's kept, and even how it's secured in a driveway. I don't know if you've seen our driveways, but many of them are on a pitch that can be pretty significant. You put a boat on that that's not secured properly, it might end up rolling right down and smacking into something. So is it the best idea? Not so sure. Is it going to happen? It's a proposal. But for all those boat owners wondering what you're going to do with your boat, you may very soon have other options. Now, many people love to have utility vehicles. Now, I'm not going to say sport utility vehicles because that's SUV. Well, those belong on the road, right? I'm talking ATVs and UTVs. So three-wheelers, which are kind of dinosaurs now. So we're talking about four-wheelers. We're talking about the little mules that people run around on. Well, they're all over the roads now in some cases, and the police are going to start cracking down. These things are running all over the roads. In fact, our neighborhood, we had one ripping around the neighborhood here the last couple weeks. And I can't say much about it because my son used to do the same thing on his motorcycle. So I'm not complaining about it. I'm just letting you know that if you're in a neighborhood that does have these four-wheelers and UTVs running around, if they don't have a license plate, don't have lights, and don't have flashers, blinkers, turn signals, that's the word that nobody really knows and knows how to use it here in Florida. Anyway, those vehicles are supposed to have it on the vehicle to drive on the roads. And you also have to be 14 years old to run the vehicle on the roads. So if those things end up getting pushed through and cracking down on that and start giving out tickets, you're going to find yourself either having to modify your vehicle to have it on the road, or you're going to have to find somewhere else to run it. Now, all this repair stuff that's been going on here in Florida, obviously it's caused a big stink where we're waiting on so many things. I put a deposit even to have my roof done, and it's going to be weeks before it's done. If I'm lucky, it could be months. But one interesting thing about these repairs is there's a material match law in Florida. So if your roof is all destroyed and they can't find the materials to match it, it needs replaced. Now, I don't know the law explicitly to be able to give it to you verbatim, but check it out. Pay attention to it. If you're somebody that's been affected by this and does have an issue with the roof, I will tell you this. Many people say, I'm not going to use a public adjuster. I'm just going to settle it with the insurance company. That's great. That's your decision. I chose to use a public adjuster, and I'm glad I did because they fought beyond what the insurance company gave me to make sure that I could replace the roof. Otherwise, I was coming out of pocket. So they took care of it for me. If you're still in a situation that hasn't been resolved for you yet, keep pushing, get yourself a public adjuster. I know there's a lot of attorneys out there right now that are also proposing to help you out. I don't know how the attorney route works as far as how feasible it is and how it fits into your scenario, but I will tell you the public adjuster works very well. I had the person recommended to me, so thank you, Joe, for that. I greatly appreciate it. And now I'm going to be on my way to getting a new roof once we can find the materials to do so. All right, so that's a little bit more about living in Florida, and there's no white Christmas here. I'm sorry, this is a little bit more brief than normal, but again, we're coming into a holiday weekend, coming into a big weather change here, and I just wanted to make sure I got you more information about the area for a different time of the year. And if you have any questions about living in Florida or moving to Florida, check out one of these other videos. If you have questions beyond that, please call, text, or email, because I've got your back when moving to the Gulf Coast.